my name is Parker.
And my name is Ned.
And this is The Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. This is episode number 21. We're recording on August 18th, and we've got two juicy segments to get to, so we're just going to jump in. Ned, tell us about the match we just played.
So the match was good versus evil from a certain point of view. It was GI Blue against Han 2 Blue. And I think that the summary of this is best conveyed by the Spaceballs quote, evil will win because good is dumb. So Parker...
I mean, shots fired, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, Parker really misplayed. Game one was kind of back and forth. Parker had me a little bit on the back foot, and then there was a misplay around Seventh Sister and cards lining up. And then I just, with GI, once you get that little like fingernail in, you can really pry your way into a lot of damage by the mid game. And so the game ends fast.
I should have, I mean, we play fast because every minute we're playing is a minute we're not recording. But I don't have a lot of practice with the lines into GI. I think I should figure that out in anticipation of our appearance on Late Night Gaming, since I think you're going to be expected to rep that. And I think it's just going to be me versus Grand Inquisitor party that night. But I just don't have a lot of practice with those lines. And they weren't obvious misplays, but they were one of those. Nope. That was the wrong line. That was the good line in the abstract, the wrong line staring down the cards. And I just didn't have answers for the Seven Sister Grand Inquisitor combo, even in the sideboard. There's just doing the 3 damage to my already damaged units is unpleasant. Han 2 Blue is taking down like showdowns, taking down
it's
like
a good
1K.
deck.
It's a good deck. I don't know if it's a great deck, and we're 2 weeks out from PAX West, and I have to kind of commit to a main deck, and Han 2 is on the very, very short list, but the line that I share at locals, I am increasingly sold on the idea that Han 2 Blue is an amazingly fun deck to lose with, which again, like, is a great mantra for locals. Like, it's a great deck to bring to locals. Deck that's fun losing. One deck, Green Vader Ramp, not fun to lose with. That is an unpleasant deck to lose with. Like,
that's
it's a great
definitely
deck
a
when
deck
you're winning.
that
You put down fatties. It's fun.
It's the stomp or be stomp kind of deck.
But it's like, if you're losing with that deck, it's just like, well, it's because I'm not playing anything. My ramp's not coming up fast enough. Mm-hmm. With Han 2, it's a great deck to lose with, but I aspire to more than having fun while losing and then being called dumb.
Damn! Shots fired. Sorry, Parker. Sorry.
No. But speaking of PAX West, you and I are going, and I'm going to go pretty hard on Star Wars Unlimited. Zulu's Board Game Cafe out of northern Seattle is running a plethora of events there. Just as booked, you can be just as booked at PAX West as you can at Gen Con. No exciting play mat, but plenty of exciting game. And I'm going to be going heavy on the draft. That's increasingly my preferred way to play this game. And my problem, I've played 2 Shadows drafts, and the first one I played Ray, and I wasn't just fed, I feasted. I was just handed,
cracked open the marrow and was
nobody was even really playing heroism, and I was just being like pack after pack, like first 10 cards, or like some people competing for blue, but I mean, it was just being handed 2 power bombs over and over and over again in blue green, and I ended up running like a nice, like my top end was 4 Gentle Giants and a Tarful, and I mean I had the Tree Tenders and everything. Like there was no mid game. I just had a lockdown 2s and 3s, space and ground, and then I could ray bump those up to get me into resource 6. I play Gentle Giant, they either panic or calmly remove it, but one way or the other, like the first Gentle Giant never lands. But when you drop a second Gentle Giant in limited, and in one of my games, my third was also there. Like that's, I mean,
Whew.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that. That's so that was great. That just happened that way.
Hmm.
But I played another one where I was in Villainy, and I was just like, I had Cad Bane. I was really excited to be Cad Bane. I like
Sorry. It's been a bit. Can you remind me of Cad Bane?
so Cad Bane is the villainy leader, yellow villainy, and
Hmm.
he whenever you play a underworld unit, he pings one of your opponent's units of their choice for 1 damage,
Okay,
and
their
then
choice. All right.
yep, and then at 6
Yeah.
resources he flips. He's a 2/8 raid 2, and that ping damage goes up to 2. If you're
Hmm.
not familiar with Cad Bane, so anyways, the other one was Cad Bane. I just wanted to make that happen
Hmm.
because he's super fun and limited, and I kind of
Yeah.
forced it, and the signals were clear, and I was like, talk to the hand. I'm playing Cad Bane, and not optimal, but
Right.
as noted, I aspire to more. I aspire to better. So in anticipation of PAX West and drafting there against strangers, not my locals, people who paid good money to get to play SWU at Seattle, which I assume means they take this seriously. I want how do I think the phrase is stay open. Like how do I not commit as soon as I know my leaders to what I'm playing? Um, I mean
Yeah.
that's a fake leading question in that we've gone over our script, but that is a genuine question that I would like to understand better by the end of the episode.
It's hard.
Uh,
It's
you know,
really hard. So we're going to be basing this segment a lot on two articles. So the first article is Ben Stark's "Drafting the Hard Way," and then a recently released response article to "Drafting the Hard Way." Ben Stark's article is back in the dawn ages of 2012. Which I was reading about it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's when I got back into Magic, and I felt
so
so old.
I'm of the opinion, Ned, that you feel. I mean, 2012 is
Yeah,
like the start of Netrunner or something. Like it's not
yeah,
actually that old. We have
yeah,
we've referenced Channel Fireball articles from like the 90s. I
yeah,
think it's time that you feel like it's the dawn ages because of time
yeah.
dilation
Yes.
from Magic dropping like 20 sets a year. Like it feels to you like it's been
Yeah,
50
no.
years
Oh
because we
man,
grew
yeah.
up we grew up with like what
Three sets a
four
year.
sets,
Yeah. Yeah, three, four
three
sets a
four
year. Yeah. Yeah.
standard and one
Yeah.
block each year
Yeah.
was the and standard was 90% or not standard. What was it called?
You know what
Standard.
standard
What
it was
was
standard? Yeah.
the format was called standard, but also the set, the
Yeah, there
like
was the
fifth edition,
block. You also
sixth
had
edition.
block. Oh, you had the core set. The core set.
The core set, yeah. So like the core
Yes.
set was like 90% reprints, and then you had the
Yeah.
block, which was just like
Hmm.
yeah, like now that's most
It's
of
gone.
August. You
Yeah.
get that many cards. So I don't think it's the dawn ages. I think that's just time dilation, Ned. Anyways, okay. So we got a 2012 Ben Stark article that has
And then
recently
we
been
have
addressed.
by Paolo Vitor Dama de Rosa.
Okay, and
Paolo. Yeah.
two things. One, dear listener, if you're in the car, as I hope you are, as our audio gets increasingly better, but our visuals still stay pallid and sad. Um, we do not expect you to have read this. We are linking these. We don't expect you to
Yeah.
stay current with
Yeah.
Magic. And then on top of that, as Ned likes to say, we are providing the value add of visiting these articles from a SWU context because a
Yes.
lot of the cutting edge game theory. Am I allowed to say game theory when it's
I
theory
think that's
about
right. Yeah, I think
gameplay?
that's valid.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a loaded term in math, but
Sure.
the game theory of the game trickles down
Hmm.
from Magic and is applicable to our new Greenfield game. So, all right, drafting the
Anyway,
something way in
drafting
SWU.
the correct way is Paolo's article. So
Yeah, I was saying,
it,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But to start off, we're going to start off with an example because I feel like it is helpful to learn from examples rather than from like a theoretical perspective, unless you are a horrible math grad student, in which case uh, you can. I,
That's
I
thank you for
remember what
taking
you
into account that I'm a simple man. So,
did. So let's pretend that you are drafting shadows and you have drafted the following leaders. You have drafted Cad Bane, Bosk, and Han Tu. So you are.
so cunning yellow villainy, red
Yep.
villainy,
Yep.
and red heroism. So you're
Yep.
probably either in red or villainy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
So pack one, you open it up, you see Django Fett. Great card in Cat Bane, great card in Bosk, great card just period. Slam it, great. Next pick, Forlom. Pops to your mind, you know, 4 cost, ambush. It's not like an insane bomb, but it's a darn good card. You're happy to play that in constructed formats. And then your third card, Ma Conkley, plays great with Cat Bane, plays reasonably well with Bosk. So you're feeling pretty well established in I'm probably Cad Bane or Bosk, leaning much more towards Cad Bane, but like Bosk is a live option, right? Next pick comes around.
So this
So this
is
this pick
pack one, pick four. Okay.
yes, and you 2 cards jump to your view. One is Chewy Pikesbane, which I think is a bomb by almost anybody's definition, and Chain Code Collector, which is a worse for long.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to ask the question, which card do you pick? And we're going to also stipulate that we're ignoring cash value, sentimental value, etc. This is just, we are trying to win as many games of this SWU draft as possible.
Okay. Well, then in my case, I mean, the way I've been playing is that I'm taking the Chainco Collector because I'm committed to Cad Bane, pack one,
Yeah.
pick one, and I'm just kind of grinding that and forcing that. But I suspect this is a loaded question.
This is a loaded question. So this is kind of like a thesis antithesis kind of thing. So we're gonna come around to an interesting perspective on it. But let's start off by talking about Ben Stark's article, which is chronologically first. So that is drafting the hard way. And Ben Stark's contention is you are naive if you are taking chain code collector. You should take
So Chainco Collector is
probably
the easy way.
this the easy way, right? You should
Okay.
be drafting the hard way, which is taking Chewy Pikesbane. And the argument that he puts forward is number one, a signaling argument. So when you are picking your first couple of cards, you have the absolute minimum amount of information, right? Like all you have seen is the cards that you have picked and very few other cards that other people have picked. But as more and more packs the picks go further and further down, the power, or rather, the amount of information that you are getting goes up because you have seen more cards being picked. So the fact that none of the 3 players to your right wanted Chewy Pikesbane is a substantial amount of information. Uh,
Okay. So,
more of yeah,
but so there's the signaling question, and you can
yeah,
just say pause. You're going to come back to this, but Star Wars Unlimited, we immediately draft. I mean, there's
yeah.
a like Seventh Wonder leaders
Yes,
pre-draft,
yes,
right? Like there's
yeah,
this. So you're already you're telegraphing your colors before your pack one pick one. Your pack one pick one is
yes.
actually your fourth pick,
Yes,
and
so
you
you
can
do have a lot more information, right? And so you can look to the people to your right and you can see like what's going on here. You can see like, okay, maybe I'm just lucky and they have like mono villainy leaders to my right, and so they wouldn't take this. And so, but I mean that is also information. That is something that you need to consider. Um, but the other thing to note is that from Ben Stark's point of view, just because you are taking Chewie does not mean that you are now suddenly flipping a switch and I am now committed to Hantu. Right? Ben Stark's perspective is this is a gamble. You are taking an option that might pay off. And the reason why you are doing this is because if there if we imagine when everybody if you imagine all the cards and all the packs that are being opened for the draft, there are a certain number of cards that fit into each deck, right? So if I'm playing Cad Bane, out of the entire table there is some fraction of the cards at this table that will fit into my Cad Bane deck. And the harder that I am pushing to go into Cad Bane, the more people that are all fighting for these same cards, the worse everybody who is trying to play a Cad Bane style deck is going to be. And naturally, some cards fit into multiple decks. Like Django Fett fits into a bunch of different decks because it's a good card, right? But the more people that are scrambling for the same colors, the same kind of archetypes, the worse off each person is going to be. And your job is to stay open, you want to take, especially in the first pack, the best possible cards because you don't know what archetypes are going to be available for you to take. And if you start fighting immediately, you may end up, because the most limited amount of information has been shared in those early picks, you are going to end up having to fight against more people than if you just kind of stayed open. And as like
So
an
the goal is to
addendum
stay
to
open as long as possible,
right is
or as long as practical or
right. You can
optimal.
only put 30 cards in your deck, right? So your objective should be to have the best possible 30 cards in your deck. And a lot of the time, you are going to be picking cards that are just going to drop on the floor, right? Like, even if you got like every single card that was earmarked for like a Cad Bane or a Bosk style deck, right? Um, there are probably more than 30 cards that you could make an argument for playing in a Cad Bane or a Bosk style deck. And so, therefore, you want to take the best 30 cards. So wasting picks on something like a chain code collector, which there's going to be more chain code collectors. And if there's not, that's also information, right? Like if,
Right, right,
if
right,
if the chain code collector is the best possible card that you could be taking going forward, then you need to find a different plan because you are not going to win, right?
right, right,
So
right. Okay.
so
So
his
for Pack
his
Four
kind
Pick
of
Four, it's just a risk reward payoff of
yeah
that. There's the Chewy Pike's Bane is has a very reasonable chance of just being a dead card in your
yeah
red villainy deck.
yes
But there's all there's if it pays off, it's buying
yeah
a lottery ticket with 20% odds is a good deal,
yeah
even though 80% of the time it's wasted money because the
right
payoff of oh wait nobody is so Chewbacca Pikesbane went from somebody's pack one pick one to somebody's pack one pick two to somebody's pack one pick three. It's
yeah
in your hands. Like people have
yeah
already opted past Pikesbane for 3 cards. There's
yes
a very decent chance that that's going to pay off,
yes
and you're going to
right
get a whole bunch of blue heroism beef.
yeah and then
Okay,
you can fit that into Tantu. And there are arguments that won't happen, right? Like maybe ahead of you somebody had like a Poe Dameron or like a Krat Dragon or something else, and it's going to end up that your Han 2 deck doesn't pay off. But his contention in drafting the hard way is that if you draft the easy way, there are times that you are just going to get fed and you are going to win, right? Like your first couple
but
of
that's
picks line
true
up.
almost anything, right? I
Right.
mean,
Your first couple of picks are going to line up with exactly what you want, and the rest of the draft is a breeze. You just take all the cards that match, and bam, Bob's your uncle. Whereas drafting the hard way, you will sometimes have a little bit of more of a struggle moment in your deck building, but the odds of you having a complete garbage draft where you end up with like a pile of cards that doesn't really work together goes way down because you kept yourself open and because you read the signals.
okay, so the argument is that
Yeah.
avoid the situation where you just have a deck full of fine,
Yes.
borderline playable in draft cards of your color.
Yep.
Okay,
Because that is what is going to happen if 3 people are all trying to draft Cad Bane at like an 8-person pod. Odds are high that all 3 of those people are going to end up with fine decks, or
right.
again, depending on the situation.
Okay, okay.
So
It sounds like a compelling argument.
I think that
But
it is.
there's been a article responding to that.
Yes.
Paolo's drafting the correct way. So
Right.
what is draft? I mean, I I would rather draft the easy way. So I'm
Right.
hoping that Paolo's argument is draft the easy way.
Paolo's argument is essentially that drafting the easy way gets a bad rap, right? Like it is a tendency of people who are sophisticated limited players to try and stay open as long as possible. And the longer that you are staying open, you're trying to keep yourself open for like the powerful cards that are going to come. But if most of the cards in the draft are basically fine, all you're doing is you are weakening. So like let's imagine that 2 sets, like one set there are a couple of cards that are amazing, and then the rest of the cards are kind of garbo, and then another set where it's kind of flatter, right? And his contention is that in a steeper situation you have to be open because otherwise you're playing a bunch of cards down here. But in a flatter situation, it's okay.
Optimizing for the low end early
Yeah,
is better than getting the keeping open to a marginal top end. If you just immediately start optimizing, picking the best commons in your color,
yeah.
and yeah, like you pass along a bomb in a color that's way off, but you've immediately optimized
Hmm.
for, then the gains can be there as well, is Paolo's
Yeah,
argument.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
And there's like a second order argument, and that is when you are taking Chewy, there is a certain amount of bad signal that you are sending, right? Like if I am taking Chewy, I am discouraging everybody from my left from going into blue heroism because otherwise they might see the Chewy and they might be confronted with the same decision that I was confronted with, right? And
And if they're not going into blue heroism, then there's a higher likelihood they're going into villainy yellow, villainy red.
right. And then when pack two comes around, they're passing to you and they've already taken the villainy yellow, villainy red cards because you speculated.
Right. Okay.
So, but Paolo is not making an argument that we should always draft the easy way. Paolo's argument is essentially consider drafting the easy way, and he provides a series of tests to talk about when one should consider drafting the easy way versus when one should consider drafting the hard way.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
the, the first question that he raises is how deep is the format? Where how deep is the format means if you look at like an average pack of cards, how far down do you have to go in that pack of cards before you get a card that you are not willing to play in like even a limited deck? A deeper format, if you miss out on some cards, it's not as bad, right? Like if I'm taking Pike's Bane and um, the I'm having instead of playing because I took Pike's Bane pick four, I'm instead having to play my pick six card, my sixth pick card in my deck instead of Chain Code Collector. Like, how much worse is the card than Chain Code Collector? If on average most of the cards are about the same power level, it's fine to speculate.
Right. 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 Yeah. And there's
Yeah,
plenty of like great common yellow cards
right,
in shadows in SWU.
right.
Okay. So I mean, is so how? And I'm not as familiar with Magic, but I mean, so Star Wars Unlimited is a, very much as a draft, as a first class citizen
Yes.
game. Like they've spoken at length about this game needs to be super draftable,
Hmm.
which tells me that like there's a design goal for a deep draft pool in
Right.
SWU in every set. So
I
are we
mean,
still evaluating? Is it relative to other SWU sets, of which we currently only have two? But let's pretend we're talking a year from now, or is it
yeah.
relative? I mean, are all SWU sets pretty deep? We believe just because the
I
game is
mean,
built.
with a sample size of two, both of the sets have been reasonably deep. But I would say that sometimes there are archetypes that don't come together, right? Like I would say that in Spark, heroism yellow didn't quite feel like it had like an archetype together, and you were kind of taking cards that were pretty good. And
I
sometimes,
remember, but
and
although I remember you
yeah,
doing a draft and basically feasting because everybody discounted heroism yellow,
exactly
and you were like,
right.
okay, not the best color, but if nobody else takes it and I just get to take all of the heroism yellow cards that I want, like
Yeah,
that's better than fighting one other person for whatever.
right. And you've done more Shadows drafts than I have. So is there like a color combination that you felt that hasn't quite worked in Shadows
I don't
drafting?
think there's a color combination, and I've done. I mean, yeah, I did a lot of pre-releases, 5 pre-releases,
Hmm.
and 2 drafts, and in my experience with Shadows, like I think it's more um, that because each color heroism villainy pairing only has one common leader. There are archetypes like, for example, I just think, and get at me in the comments if I'm wrong. I think Gar Saxon in draft is pretty bad. Uh, like
Yeah,
I mean, obviously you'd rather have Kira, but like there just aren't enough draftable uh,
like good upgrades and
upgrades,
units
good
to put the
upgrades, or
upgrades on.
ways to
Yeah,
get XP, or
yeah,
ways to get shields to make his +1/+0 worth it. And when his flip turn is all about like protecting that sick upgrade, the dark saber, obviously, or
yeah.
whatever, so that when you lose it, you get the upgrade back. But like, congratulations, you got I don't know,
Ruthlessness.
holdout
You got
pistol or ruthlessness back,
yeah.
like which is sure that's a card that you get back, but is that worth your leader pick? So I don't think it's that the color pairings are bad. I think it's that there are leaders who are just kind of out of the gate
Hmm.
bad because you can't get what they need. You know, Similar to Hondo in
Right.
last episode, we kind of knocked on Hondo a little bit in constructed and mea culpa. Like, sounds like there's
No,
some
I
juice to
watched those
squeeze there.
games. No, there was
Yeah.
definitely some juice in those Gen Con games. Now that I was able to watch the footage.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like mea culpa, but in a 30 card deck, even if you can get enough good smuggle cards, like man, smuggling out like 5, 6, 7 cards in limited, like the deck's already thin at 30, and every time you smuggle, you mill yourself one. So, like, I think there's some. I think there's just a couple leaders who it's like they're a bad pick if you can avoid it because you not because you won't see good cards, but because you in their color, but like there's a card type or a component type or a keyword type that they're meant to synergize with, which you're
Hmm.
not seeing enough with. But I don't think in Shadows, maybe Redville. No, they're no all the
Yeah.
I can't think of a color. It's more. I mean, it's such a like upgrades
But I
matter,
think the leaders.
Mandalorians, right?
Yeah.
Like bounty hunters matter. There's a lot of keywords, and if you're too dependent on that keyword and you aren't able to pull it off, then you end up in that mediocre playable, right? Like
Yeah.
playing Cad Bane with a lot of good yellow villainy cards that aren't Underworld, like that
Cad Bane is
that
just
seems like
not
a bad
compelling as a leader if you're not getting the value out of him. Yeah.
right. Like it's hard to get enough. Bosk is good just because he's
Mhm.
such a beast and he doesn't have to fire much to really fire.
Yeah.
But again, getting enough bounties to feel like you really made the right choice if there's another villainy red option for you, right? Like, yeah. Anyway,
So,
before we get too
so
far
there's
afield,
the
okay, so
yeah. So there's the format depth, and I think that the leader depth relates to that, right? Like if I if my villainy leader is Gar Saxon, so let's imagine I have two heroism leaders and a villainy leader, and my villainy leader is Gar Saxon. Let's say, um, how how deep is the format for me in villainy blue? Probably not as deep as I'd like, and so I might want to speculate less if I'm leaning in a villainy blue direction. So that's sort of generic set wise considerations. But then there's also like card specific considerations because I kind of stacked the deck by making it Chewy Pikesbane against Chain Code Collector. But like how good does the card need to be that you need to consider on speculating on it versus Chain Code Collector? And so Paolo proposes a couple of things that you should consider. So one of them is how good is the card compared to what you have now? So, like for example, how good is Chewy Pike's Bane compared to the things that you have? Would you rather play a deck with Django Forlom and Makonkli, or would you rather just have like if you were White Room situation, would you rather have Pike's Bane or would you rather have those three cards in your hand, assuming that you had the resources to pay them?
or just, I mean,
Yeah,
right, like,
yeah,
which one do you want to be your dead pile? Like,
right,
assuming the rest of the draft goes the way you want it to, you're
right.
getting 40 something more cards.
Yes.
Would you be happy if your dead pile is McClunky
Yeah.
and Forlom and so forth?
Yeah. The second is how good is the card relative to an average card? The better the card is relative to an average card, the more you want to speculate on it.
I mean,
Uh,
that really just feels like
yeah,
how good is the card, right?
right.
Like,
But I think as a consideration on that, there's this idea of synergy power versus base power. So
right.
base power is like how good is the card if you have complete white room scenario, we're just playing this one card. How good is the card? How good is Chewy Pike's Bane? I'd say white room pretty good. Like it's good stats, it smuggles, it kills something with 5 or less remaining hit points. Like unless the format is very odd and it has a large number of units with lots of hit points, you're generally happy to be drawing uh, chewy. But with chain code, right? Like chain code's a 4/2 with ambush, so it's effectively like a removal effect that costs 4. But if there's a lot of bounties in the format, then the fact that it's got that synergy power going for it. So if you're already if the card you're speculating on has a lot of power, but it requires a lot of synergy to work, so like I don't know, the dark saber might be. The dark saber is pretty powerful on its own, but I think that it really shines in certain kinds of decks. Or is there another card that you'd recommend?
I no, I mean,
Yeah,
so McClunky, for example, is a
yeah,
good because like
yes,
the Dark Saber in every most decks that are running Dark Saber are just running because it's a lot of beef by itself. Like
right,
if you have other Mandalorians out, great, but that's not
sure,
why you're running it.
yeah,
No, but I mean like McClunky, right? Like McClunky is a
yeah.
fantastic card if you have a critical mass of
Cheap underworld units, right? Like if
cheap
you're
underworld
if
units.
yeah, if you're bouncing Xanadu blood to deal 3 damage to something, I don't think you're feeling real good.
No, you want like yeah.
Yeah,
So it's a great card
yeah,
if you have the synergy. So,
right.
and I think, and I think that goes back to uh, the leader synergy again. In
Mhm.
that there's this built-in pool of synergy. Ray's synergy is easy to hit, right? Like
Right.
you need 2 power cost cards in your deck, a lot of them,
Mhm.
because you need turn 1, turn 2 plays, many of which are 2 power cards. So it's not a huge sacrifice to take a card that really synergizes with Ray because you kind of need that card if you're in that color at all and you know it's going to synergize. Whereas, like taking a garbage upgrade just because you're in Gar Saxon, like you only have 30 cards. You don't want 8
Yeah,
garbage upgrades just to trigger Gar.
yeah.
So,
Like
so
how
I
many
think that
brutal tactics do you need? Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so yeah, yeah. There's a component of like, I think the synergy that you're asking isn't just a
Mhm.
hypothetical synergy. You already know
Right.
some, even if it's pack one, pick
Pick
four,
one. Yeah.
pack one, pick
Yeah.
three. You
Yeah.
know some synergy that you're aiming for. You're aiming
Mhm.
potentially one of your 3 leaders is looking for Mandalorians. You know that,
Right.
right? Like you got Bo-Katan. You know you're looking for Mandalorians. You're looking for whatever, like
Right.
smuggles. You're looking for bounties. You're looking for whatever it is they need to fire. You're looking for that. Pack one, pick one. So okay. So how
So I'm
replace?
gonna
Well,
actually zoom. I'm gonna zoom in
sure.
on that
Our
just a little
synergy.
bit.
Yeah.
Yes, for the synergy argument. So, like, let's say that you have Bo-Katan as one of your leaders, for sake of argument,
Sure.
and
Sure.
you're being given, I don't know, let's say like a house cast soldier, right? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
much do you value it? So that's a 2 cost red, 2/3 with the Mandalorian trait and Saboteur, and I'd say like that's kind of a marginal card, right? Like, I'm not I like it because it's a 2, but there are a lot of things that I would rather play over it. How aggressive do I want to be versus that? Versus, let's say, like, I don't know, a 4 or 5 cost red. Sorry, let me look up a 4 cost red card that I would like more than that, like a hunting Nexu, right? Where,
Right.
yeah,
Or pillage.
yeah, pillage, yeah, pillage is great, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, so okay. So yeah. So again, if you're not in Bo-Katan,
right,
that you don't want you. I mean, that's the house cast is something that you're taking because it's the last card in the pack of the colors you're looking at,
and you need some twos, right? Like,
and you
yeah,
need some
yeah,
twos.
twos, right,
But like Bo-Katan is makes that card suddenly
hmm
worthy of consideration a little bit earlier. I mean, it's
right.
still not a great card, but you know. Okay, okay.
So I mean, like the synthesis position, and to kind of try and put a cap on this, the
Yep.
core idea is one ought to draft. When one drafts, um, it is important to not fall into the easy pit of the trench on the right side, the ditch on the right side of I have picked 3 yellow cards and therefore I will take every subsequent yellow card and ignore the other cards of which might be better. And one also ought not to just cherry pick the quote unquote good stuff and then hope that it comes together at the end, right? But there
So I
is
mean,
a
I kind of
yeah,
I feel like Paolo has. I mean, it's a well written article, and
right.
and I cast zero shade here, but if the question is should I draft the easy path of go for the synergy, or should I
Yeah.
draft for the hard path of leave myself open? Paolo has said taking the like you know the my favorite answer is that
Yeah.
it depends.
Yes.
Like
No. Exactly.
and I mean there are criteria there, but
Right.
you have to evaluate each card of all these questions of variables of how far afield,
Hmm.
and it's risk versus payoff, right? Like how big a right, like how far afield is this card, and then
Right.
how big a payoff is it if I'm actually able to make this work. And
Yeah.
so okay, um, then the other question I have, and this is a question we haven't been able to ask in a while, Ned, is what is your name?
My name is Monday.
My name is Monday. I'm a mathematician.
So, it's been a hot minute, but I finally had time together because I got most of my prep done for PAX West. Um, and so I was able to run the regression with the Shadows cards.
Okay,
And
so the math for this segment is the classic math, because we've done a couple
yes,
different episodes. The most recent math we've done has been on like tournament performance outliers.
yeah,
This goes back to what I have been evangelizing is as Ned Math,
yes,
the towards a perfect custom homebrew card. How are the Fantasy Flight developers valuing things you might find on a card?
yes, that is exactly
Okay.
it. Is the goal of this regression? So I'm using a tool called linear regression, where essentially you plonk everything in and you fit a line to it. And there are more complicated and better ways to do it, but
But
I use linear regression. Well, let's not dive into the weeds, right?
I was
Yeah,
about to say the episode has been growing, especially, and we've got probably a lot of listeners who haven't gone back into our catalog. We've explained this, but we do, and I want to reward our loyal followers by not explaining how this works again. But the truth is, math is math. To quote the Incredibles, and Ned has been able to, regardless of what is true,
yeah,
in a universal context, or what the
right.
developers think is true. We don't know what either of those things are.
No,
I don't know any of these things. Ned doesn't know what either of those things are, but
no,
Ned can predict, or not even predict, but Ned can describe accurately what we have seen
he
across
does.
two sets. That
Yes,
based on the 504 cards, is that math right? I think that math is right.
yeah, I think
504 cards that we have seen. Uh, this is a truth.
yeah,
That these are how the developers in these two sets so far are valuing power, how they're valuing hit points, and
yeah,
Ned boils the budget down to adjusted stat points,
yes,
and
which is power.
our original pitch, or Ned's original look at just Sparker Rebellion, was that
Yeah,
power was worth about 2 adjusted stat points,
yeah,
and hit points were worth about 1 with
yeah,
pretty high confidence. We got more information in
yes,
Shadows, and Ned was able to revise that, and I believe power is now at 1.3 to hit points
yes,
1.
yes,
So there's a slight preference. So we can say, given a card's cost,
yes,
we're able to figure out some number of adjusted stat points,
yes,
and that we expect, that math expects will be there. And
yes,
then we can say, here's what you can buy with those adjusted stat points.
yeah,
And
exactly.
then up till now, Ned has been limited to power and hit points. That is what we have discovered, what we have quantified. But there's a lot more cards,
And
double the cards.
and
And
arena,
arena, which
arena.
arena is 1 hit point, and hot dang does Black Sun from Cell Block Guard be like,
Yep. No,
there it is.
lines up. Yep.
1 hit point is 1 stat point buys you a hit point or the space arena, and there it is, like
Yep.
down to the keywords. Perfect. Love it. So, or traits, down to the traits.
Yep.
So, do we have new things you can quantify with adjusted stat points
Oh,
now?
heck yeah. We have a lot more variables. So, something that wasn't mentioned is previously we also estimated what I call damage and card draw, where that's like cards that draw cards when they enter the battlefield, or sorry, cards that draw cards when they are played, and cards that deal damage when they are played. And sometimes, and One of the things about regression is that
So card draw is obvious. Like
yeah,
the Yoda gives you a card. You factor that
right.
in
Right, but
to
is
its.
Yoda card draw, right? Because Yoda isn't guaranteed to draw you a card, right? Like the game might
If he
end before
doesn't
Yoda
die,
draws you a card. Right. The game might end before Yoda draws you a card. Yoda might get waylaid and never get played. There's a bunch of these things. And so up on the GitHub, I have all of my estimations. And I had to revise a lot of them because I came to a bit, like having played a lot more SWU, I now have a much better feeling about how to evaluate things. So like, for example,
and
channel
as you're always clear,
yeah.
the we without going into all of it, the estimations how like Yoda is worth
Yeah.
more than 0 card draw, less than 1,
Sure.
and how much card draw Yoda is worth is a number that Ned has made his best assessment on.
Which is
And if
one.
you are,
It turns out that
uh,
I've
it's
estimated
1.
you at one.
Sure,
Yeah,
but we've talked
yeah,
like
but you can make an
Taggy is a
argument, right?
classic exhibit,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
uh, and so we've gone over all of that.
Yeah.
If you really care, dive into the GitHub and get at Ned in the comments. But for the
Happy
95% of our dear listeners who don't care, assume that Ned's massaging in good faith. So what else have we learned, Ned?
So I have added the following variables: rarity, which is measured between 0 and 4, with 0 being fixed and 4 being legendary. I have added the presence or absence of a bounty. I have added grit. I have added restore, which is numerical, ambush, shielded, and raid, which is also numerical.
So, okay, I'll circle back on the numeric ones. So,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. Wow. Okay, so I'm excited to hear about rarity. But
Yeah.
unless you have a thought, I say we do let's do the keywords first.
Sure, yeah. So bounty is worth about 1.74 adjusted stat points. And it is hard for me to disambiguate bounties, as in like escape Wookiee. What is the 3/3 yellow
Draw a
that
card
unit? Yeah,
or
no,
exhaust a unit.
is exhaust unit, right? And High Loban Enforcer, which draws the card. How ought you to evaluate these? I can't
Compared
really.
to Dr. Evazan, right?
Yeah,
Ready
like
12 resources, right? These are all.
they're all just wrapped up into the category bounty, and the regression found it significant. So that's a
So
way of
the
saying, well,
existence of a bounty
yeah,
obviously is significant. How much?
right,
Because every
and
bounty is.
right, and when you're lumping everything together, like the things that you're paying a lot, like Dr. Evazan, for example, I think is probably dragging the value of bounty up, and Escape Wookiee is Fugitive Wookiee is dragging the value of bounty down, and
But
there's
in theory,
yeah,
in set 9, Ned, you could be
yeah,
quantifying each bounty by the value it has just in that
yeah,
draw a card, negative draw a card, or opponent draws
yeah,
a card is not. So it's no longer bounty. It's that this card
yeah,
just does the thing.
yes,
Okay, but for now, all
but
bounties are treated
yeah,
equal,
all
and
bounties are
they
treated
give
equal.
you
An
or
extra
they.
almost 2 stat points,
Okay.
almost 2 adjusted stat points, which is a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so next up we have grit. The cost of grit is approximately negative 1.23 stat points. So if your unit has grit, it will have about a point of power less than you would expect from another comparable unit.
That feels like that tracks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Restore is negative 0.73. So, like, Restore 1 is less than a hit point. So, Restore 1 probably isn't going to be costing you any stat
Is
points.
the
But
rapport restore getting 0.7 costing 0.73 adjusted stat points per? Is that per point of restore? So in
that is per
theory,
point of Restore.
uh, so restore 3 on Luke. The math is finding that's about 2 in adjusted stat
Yeah.
points and
So,
change.
yeah. So, yeah, that is the
Okay.
estimate. But naturally, like, not everything fits. Like, some cards are going to be above the line, some cards are going to be below the line. But this is
Sure.
this
Sure.
is the best estimate.
The line. Yes.
Ambush, yeah. Ambush is about the same as grit, negative 1.22. So you're about a point of power shy or slightly more than a hit point shy if you are an ambush unit. Shielded is also in the grit space of negative 1.24. So again, it's like a point of power. Not to put too fine a point on it, but if you compare like Probe Droid versus Crafty Smuggler, um, you can see that, or like Crafty Smuggler versus the wide variety of 2/3s with different keywords, you can see that Crafty. There's a reason why Crafty Smuggler is included versus the 2/3s with keywords, and that is 2/2 shielded is worth slightly more than a 2/3 with another keyword ish.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And raid is about the same as restore. It's negative 0.69 per point of raid. So each
Okay.
point of raid is like 2 points of raid is effective to a point of power.
So based on the ones you've been able to quantify so far, we're
Yeah.
finding about a point of power for a keyword.
Yeah.
And if it's a
For
numeric keyword, then you're looking at
about
about
2.
a value of 3 for 2 power.
Yeah.
Or 2 hit points rather, 2 points. Okay.
Yeah. 2 hit points for about 3. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So those are the keywords, and again, there's confidence intervals on these, so that's the regressor does its best estimate, but this
But
isn't.
these are all notable. These are all like within some bound of you would be comfortable
Yes.
standing in front of a group of people, or
Yeah.
say podcast in front of thousands,
Yes.
and say, yeah, this is probably true.
Yeah, this is probably true. Yeah, I would absolutely stand by these numbers. This is the absolute best estimate of the numbers as has been fed in. I am completely willing to stand behind and defend them.
Okay, but the one that I asked you to calculate, the one that I was excited that if we had enough, is rarity.
It
Now this
is.
is
We do have enough, and it's pretty significant. So rarity is about 0.256 per point of rarity. So like a standard card is 0, and rarity has a little bit of an annoyance because there are some cards that appear at more than once in the rarity. So for example, if you consider Taggy. Taggy appears once on the fixed sheet in Moff Gideon's deck, and also as a common in Spark. So
yeah, I think he's a common. Like I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean
So
that's
I have
true.
estimated that as 2 different cards.
Okay,
So
okay.
yeah, but that's not entirely fair, and there needs to be some deduplication going through. But it was funny to watch Taggy popping up as 2 different cards.
Oh, no, there are the 10
Yeah,
reprints
yeah,
in the Shadows starter,
yeah,
but otherwise, yeah,
yeah,
the numbers that you're running aren't including like the varying rarities in organized
yeah.
play or anything like that.
Right.
Okay, so you're saying that at 0.25, then being
So a legendary is worth about a hit point more than being a common.
as in it costs a point to be a legendary.
No. You get an extra stat point.
Oh, you
Being
get an extra
legendary
stat point,
buys you an extra stat point.
which is actually like 1 hit point for legendaries. That tracks. Like I mean, that feels
Like
that doesn't
consider
boggle the mind.
Yoda. Yeah, like I mean Yoda's not a legendary, but
So
yeah,
that's a question.
yeah.
So you didn't run uniqueness.
I did run uniqueness, but uniqueness was not significant.
So we
I
haven't been able
did
to.
not feel So to this point, I also had to remove draw because the number of units that had draw as a when played effect was not large enough for me to be able to have a good estimator on it. Again, the larger your population is, you do need a certain
Minimum
density of
threshold.
a thing to appear. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, and we can
Yeah.
revisit this, but so uniqueness
Yeah.
can only occur at uncommon, right? So there are no common unique units,
Yes.
not counting
That is a
reprints.
selection effect. So that goes into why I don't have overwhelm, is because the regression is very confident that being overwhelmed buys you some stat points. And the reason for that is that we do not have very many overwhelm units that are small.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there are selection effects that one
Okay.
has to consider.
Well, that's actually
Yeah.
like, and I'm seeing these numbers for the
Yeah.
first time, dear listener. That's actually really exciting for me. That, I mean, 1 point. I mean, rarity. We wanted there to be good commons. We want there to be good uncommons. Said every TCG dev ever about
Yeah.
every TCG ever. So like great, but we'd like to look at the pudding, please. And I mean, I feel like 1 hit point for a legendary compared to a starter card, like that does not boggle the mind. That doesn't feel like awful.
No.
The difference between a common and a rare then is half a hit point.
Yes.
Yeah, that seems fine.
I mean, with the caveat that I'm not taking text into account, right? So
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah, because they get more
yeah,
complicated and do weird or
right, they get
wild
more
things.
complicated, right? And so that becomes increasingly difficult for me for like a simple tool to estimate. Um,
Okay.
so another thing that I will talk about is now that we've talked about
Ooh, but
keywords,
before
yes,
we get there, Ned,
yes,
next time you do more regression,
yes.
length of the words in the ability box. I would be very
Ooh,
curious to see.
that's a good one. I was
Right, we
gonna
don't know
add.
if the words are good, but we can look at if there are more of them. So come back with that. So
I absolutely will. Another thing that I'm going to add is ramp. Right now, Super Laser Technician just looks like a bad card
yeah,
because ramp is not modeled because it's not a very common feature on cards. But I want to
we have
see,
5 ramp cards now. By
yeah,
my standards, like 5 clear ramp cards.
and
Command,
of
super laser tech,
which, yeah,
resupply, price on your head, and
the Assault
spark of
Cruiser.
resistance.
Well, there's
Oh,
that, and then the Assault
the
Cruiser, yeah, and then DJ Smuggle is also kind of a ramp effect.
okay,
Um,
yeah. Well, when we get a
yeah,
pool of enough to inform, because I super laser tech is not a bad card, Ned. I
it's
mean,
not. I
you
completely
should
agree.
tell the math.
Yeah, I
So
will. I will absolutely tell the math that it's got that wrong, and this is one of the reasons why the math is a guideline and not like it is a good first place to look at things. And we will get to that in a little bit. Is that I was surprised. I was both surprised and and heartened in the cards that popped up as the things that have come up as the most undercosted relative to their stats.
are you ready to talk about that?
I want to talk about a couple more things first.
Okay.
But I'm going to tease. It's the
Stick around to the dear listener
yeah,
end. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
is the
um,
5 most overstated cards. So
yeah. So there's a constant term. So basically, if you were a zero cost card, I would estimate that you would have about 2.5 points of adjusted stats. So like a 1/1 for zero is about what I would estimate you at.
that makes what
The battle droids, yeah,
battle droids, which means clones are. I mean, we knew they're better, but
yeah,
it's clones who are above curve, not battle
yeah.
droids who are below curve. Okay, okay,
That is the estimation. Each point of cost will buy you by itself about 1 point of power, 1.2 worth of stats, worth of adjusted stats.
okay.
But there is a squared cost term. So, like for example, and the reason for that I've discussed before. But basically, if you look at the units, if you were to plot like the adjusted stats of all of the units, it's not
R
linear.
two's like
Curves. Yeah.
R2's the best card in the game if you don't take into account that
Yes.
a couple extra points at 1 is different than more later.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so you have this like squared cost term. So more expensive units tend to just have more stats than a pure line would predict. It's not a lot. It's 0.07, but it's times cost squared. So it would like a 6 cost unit is going to be 36 times 0.07. So if that's like another 3-ish points of stats that you're going to get on a 6 cost unit versus a 1 cost unit.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And there, I've tried a bunch of other functions. Cost squared seems like it works pretty well. It gives good significance. I'm happy to make arguments for more complex forcing functions. But another note about regression is that the more variables you add, the less stable the regression becomes because you get essentially there are a bunch of different ways to express things and you get confusion. So
So
before
you're running each of these. You're not adding all these as variables. You're adding each of these as like their own run of like
No.
ambush
I'm
versus
I'm
not
doing a
ambush.
single run with all of these variables because
Oh, okay.
if you do each one individually, you will get it bad. It's that this is the number of variables that I've been able to get the regression to sustainably support.
Oh,
And
okay. Awesome.
the more cards we get, the more variables it can sustainably support.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
to use an analogy, if you're talking about like baseball pitchers, um, if you say like, okay, well the pitcher's left-handed and the batter's right-handed, and it's in the summer on a cloudy day, and it rained 2 days ago, and they're it's a home game in a northern hemisphere field, like a northern U.S. field. If you add enough caveats, you can get down to a very, very small sample size, and that's as you're adding more and more. Like yeah,
you want a big sample size, so you have
yes,
to. How many variables can you add and still have a sufficient sample size?
exactly right.
Okay,
Because
got it.
otherwise, like each circumstance is unique, and then you don't get a good regression. You get garbage.
Yep. Okay.
The last thing I'm
Do we
going to talk
have
about before
garbage?
I do the fun stuff, we do not have garbage. So this hopefully can appear, but this is my error histogram. So QQ plots, I got some feedback from some colleagues of mine that QQ plots are lovely, but the layperson does not appreciate a solid QQ plot. So the error histogram is a more uh, uh, intuitive way of expressing this information. So essentially, what it
Speaking
is,
as a layperson, yeah, I like bell curves and just
yeah,
bar graphs are
yeah,
made by Excel, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
I can
So
track a bar graph.
yes, so this is the x-axis is the error. So like how far off we were in our predictions. Where
And yep, okay.
positive, yeah, a positive number is a we were off by we underguessed, and a negative number is we overguessed. The regression overguessed. And then you ideally want this error histogram to peak at about 0, meaning that most of the time you are on, if it's shifted to one side or another, that means that you're consistently undershooting or overshooting. You'll notice that this peaks at about 0. We may be overshooting a little bit. Um, I could see an argument for that, but it looks like it peaks at about 0. And then you also want it not to be skewed, so you want about the same mass of the bell curve to fall on both sides. And a thing that I forgot to mention, but ought to be said, is that the height of each box, each um, box is
Bar.
the number bar. Thank you. Is the number of times that we had that particular miss.
Oh, okay, right. So you're tracking,
Yeah,
and so you can't track a.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I mean, that looks.
yeah.
Speaking on behalf of all the lay people, that looks fantastic, Ned. So that
Thank
looks
you.
accurate. So, can
That
you
that
tell
yeah,
me? So there's. It looks like there's one or two occurrences that are like way. Is that super laser technician that we way under
I
guessed?
think that
Oh.
the like -4, though -3 to -4 is super laser technician.
Oh no, sorry. What's the one that's almost 6?
That would be on the list
Oh, are
of
you? Oh, is that the list
yeah,
of the top 5? Oh yeah, let's do
yeah,
that then.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so
top 5 overcosted. So this is the math says one thing,
this is
and based on
undercosted. These are undercosted. Top
right.
five undercosted. Yeah.
Don't say undercosted. Say
Overstated.
overstated. It
Static.
sells it better.
Overstated. Yeah.
So this is the math says they should based on 500 cards says they
Yeah.
should 4 cards they should cost X, and they cost a little bit less than X, as
Yes.
in
Or
they
a
give you
lot less than
more.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So top 5. What is number 5?
Number 5 is Crate Dragon. Crate Dragon is almost entirely on the basis of the estimate, or not entirely, but a significant amount of it is on the basis of the damage that I've assessed it, where I've assessed it at about 5 points of damage on play. Um, you
Oh,
know,
because it's going to
yeah,
take
yeah,
if they rivals followed immediately,
exactly.
or
They're
not,
taking
that's 6
six.
points
Yeah,
of damage
yeah,
to something.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
it doesn't take into the because that blew my mind that it was on the list at 5, because it doesn't take into account overwhelm, and I was like, there's no way you could codify its ability, but you've codified its ability as 5 points of damage on play.
Yes, because
Okay.
sometimes it gets rival falls for 6. Sometimes your opponent runs units into it. Sometimes things happen, but I've codified it at about 5.
How much
So
damage does your model ca- count when they scoop?
uh, the model does not account for that. In fact, that is an interesting situation because you might
Because I
estimate
played a
it.
lot of crates that
Like
just scoop.
it inflicted no damage.
Yeah.
But
Or
uh,
30.
yeah, one or the other.
Okay. All right. So 5 is crate.
Right. It has 22 points of total stats, and we predicted it at 19.34 for an error of 2.66 points. So about a hit point and a point of power worth of underestimation. Next
Okay.
up, at
Okay.
number 4, we have Wild Rancor. With
Okay.
again, like another, I estimated it at 4 points of damage coming in, because I'm estimating like it's going to deal 2 damage to other units. Um, there will be 2 other units on the battlefield, which it will deal 2 damage to each of them. Um,
So
again,
here's a question:
yeah,
does your
yeah.
model for dealing damage include dealing damage to your own units as a good
It
thing?
does not currently.
Okay, so you're assuming you're playing wild rank. The math assumes you're playing
Yeah,
wild rancor when there's at least 2 other
enemy
enemy
units
units.
on an empty battlefield. Yeah, on an
Oh,
empty ground arena. Yeah,
okay, okay, okay,
yeah.
okay.
I feel like that's not that uncommon of a description of when one plays Wild Rancor.
No, you're not playing wild rancor while you have 4 ground units and they have none.
Yeah, I mean, so Wild Rancor has 15.2 points of total stats, and we predict it at 12.34 points of total stats for an error of 2.86 of overpowered to its expected cost.
Okay.
Number 3, I was actually surprised by because this isn't even taking the cost reduction into account, and that is Jabba's Rancor. Jabba's Rancor at 19.8 points of total stats with a prediction of 16.76 points of total stats for an error of 3.
Well, that tracks for me because actually, when you ran the old model on Sparker Rebellion, one of the most overstated cards that you found was the Blizzard Assault
Yes. Yes.
AT,
Yeah.
and Jabba's Rancor has the same cost, same stats.
Yeah.
And then if you're valuing it as some number of 3 or 6
Yes.
damage, or
3 damage. Yeah. Yeah.
3 damage without costing
Yeah.
itself, then yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see how it's like the model treats it as a significantly superior Blizzard.
Number 2 is a card that I think that, speaking for myself, I am sick of seeing. It is Darth Vader unit.
Okay.
So
Yep.
this comes in.
And
I
are
revalued
you
it.
giving it an extra stats for the unit it
Yes,
brings in?
I'm valuing it at 3/3 worth of stats and a card draw because you are drawing a card out of your deck effectively and playing it for an additional 3/3 of stats.
And you can now take
Yeah.
into account its ambush in addition to
Ambush.
its
Yeah.
stat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's got a keyword
So,
that's tracked.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
So
sense.
its
Good.
total stats is 19.6. The prediction, we would expect it to have 14.32 points of stats for 5.28. So that's that little bar, if you look off there on the right
Yep,
in the
that's
error
one
plot
of the
at
2.
start. Yeah. And then there's one more
But
that's actually. Oh, sorry.
before you talk about the one more, I think this
Yeah.
goes to show that there's not a little but a lot of nuance between what the math perceives
Yes.
and reality, right?
Yes.
And what is played at planetary qualifier. Please do
Yeah.
not. Nobody,
At
I
us.
think,
Yeah.
is, but don't use this as a guide. But this is the only thing this is used for a guide for is creating custom cards because I think there is a non-trivial gap in power level between number 2, Darth Vader, and number 1, which is
Gideon's light cruiser, which actually doesn't even fit on the error plot. It is like another one notch over to the right.
oh wow, okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It does not fit on the error plot, and if I included it, it makes the error plot look weird.
right.
I mean,
So
not weird, but yeah. So
it's just
Gideon's light cruiser is in space, has like a reasonable stat spread. I'm valuing it as if you're playing it in Gideon, and
because why would you not?
it's
Yeah,
because why would you not? And so it is that, and it effectively has the Darth Vader come into play, where it draws you a card and is 3/3 worth of stats. Because I'm assuming that you have a unit in your discard pile that is 3/3, and it's effectively drawing it for you out of the discard pile.
and which is
So
crazy. I mean,
yeah,
Moff Gideon is not
bad
like is not
necessarily. Yeah,
he is not he's not the starter villainy leader that preceded him,
yeah,
and if he's to be cracked, he hasn't been cracked yet. But that's crazy to me. Like when I saw that list, I was like,
yeah.
all of these see some competitive play except for number 1. So stats aren't everything, right? Like the math
Yeah.
isn't everything. There's
Right. No, exactly. But Gideon's Light Cruiser is estimated or has 23 points of total stats, and we would predict that given its cost and these totals, that it would instead have 16.03 points of total stats for an
that's a
error of
huge gap.
almost 7. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think Thank you, Ned, for doing this. I know people absolutely love it, and then also some people get incensed, which is like
I'm happy to have arguments with people.
passion plus uh, ire is how you succeed at social media and content creation, Ned. So you're killing it. So thank you. Thank you, dear listener, for bearing with us. But that is all she wrote. This was episode 21 of The Force Unlimited, and we're recording on August 18th. Uh, if you have any thoughts about the episode, please email us at theforceunlimited@gmail. And I want to really note, dear listener, I see the stats, and we actually hear enough feedback that I know a lot of people are listening, but nobody's asking us questions, which breaks my heart because deep down, secretly, I know that both Ned and I, in our heart of hearts, wish we were college professors, and
Oh
and
yeah.
and we're getting paid like tenured money to just answer banal, myopic questions. So if we are in a position to answer questions that nobody else can answer between the two of us. If you have questions, please send them to us. We would love to answer them. And in fact, because I was cleaning out my son's room in honor of Twilight of the Republic, we've got Obi-Wan Kenobi Lego set that I will send to anybody who gives us a question that we answer on air, as opposed to just like love the show, which I mean is nice to hear. That's always
Yeah.
great to hear. Never
No,
gets old.
don't stop
But
sending those. I love those.
but also the answering if your question gets asked and answered on air, I'll send somebody a Lego set. I don't know if that's worth anything, but I don't need two Obi-Wan Kenobi from Attack of the Clone Lego sets, so I'll give one in honor of Twilight of the Republic. Do you have any final thoughts, Ned?
I do. So it's actually a somewhat question directed at you. Do you mind if I shill for my appearance that I'm going to be doing at PAX
No,
West?
so I have been actually like soft shilling for you, Ned. I am going
Yeah.
to be playing a boatload of Star Wars Unlimited at PAX West. I have very publicly only going to do one of two things: either buy the exclusive convention exclusive Dark Side 6 pack of premium Star Wars Unlimited cards, or fuel a lot of sad tweets and content engagement about how the system was buggy and I couldn't get the convention exclusive that I'm literally only going to PAX West to procure. But Ned, you were already going long
I
before PAX West Woo was announced. What are you doing at PAX West?
I am going to be running with the Unpub Network playtests of two of my board games that I have designed. They are one of them is in a more finalized state than the other. But if you are going to PAX West and you would like to play something that I designed, I will be running playtests on Saturday morning and Sunday morning, both at 10 a.m. at the Unpub area. And one of them is a trick taker with light historical theming, and the other of which is a game about dwarves going into holes and murdering monsters to get money. But I
I
would
will
love to
say,
see. Yeah.
having played a number of Ned's games, if you like the vibe of the show, you will like the vibe of Ned's games. And the inverse is also true. Um,
Yes.
I, strong recommendation that if you listen to the show and you're at PAX West, take the time to sit down and play one of Ned's contraptions. And with that, dear listener, we will see you post PAX West in a few weeks.
Adios.